Let's talk about the Chicago Bears. I've talked about the Bears a lot over the last few weeks because of the moves that they have made to their offensive line. Well, they just made some more moves today. There's going to be no excuses for Caleb Williams for this upcoming season because this previous season, he was placed into a bad situation. And I know a regular fan may look at it and say he had Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze. He also had DJ Moore. How is that a bad situation for a rookie quarterback? For one, he is still a rookie. It takes time to get developed and acclimated into the NFL. The same has happened with CJ and Jaden Daniels. Even with some of the best rookie seasons that we have seen in the past, they have had some bad rookie moments. So you have to go through those tough patches with your young quarterback. But they placed him into a tough situation with a terrible head coach in Matt Eberflus and behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL. A main constant with the Chicago Bears over the last decade is the fact that their offensive line has not been good enough. They dealt with offensive line problems with Mitch Trubisky. They dealt with offensive line problems with Justin Fields, and they dealt with this from this previous season. Caleb Williams was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL. The second most sacked quarterback was CJ with the Houston Texans. Just a few years ago, Justin Fields was tied with being the most sacked quarterback in the NFL with Russell Wilson when Russell Wilson was a starter in his first year with the Denver Broncos. So the offensive line has been a major issue. Now, they have went out there and they have tried to put draft picks into the offensive line like Braxton Jones, Darnell Wright, and also Tevin Jenkins, but it has not worked out. So when your drafting isn't up to par with Ryan Poles, and I still believe that Darnell Wright could be a good right tackle in the NFL. You put the right guards around him. When the draft picks aren't working out, when you have money in free agency, you go out there and you address that need even more, because I do feel like Ryan Poles is a good general manager. I did come out and I did say that he did a terrible thing by bringing back Matt Eberflus for one more season. Matt Eberflus was never a good head coach to me, but Ryan Poles went out there. He let him go. He brings in Ben Johnson. But before I get into the Ben Johnson hiring, I want to talk about these free agency moves first. You made a trade to bring in Joe Thuney just a week ago from the Kansas City Chiefs. That's a phenomenal trade. That's a great offensive lineman. That's a top offensive lineman in all of football at the left guard position, and he could play the left tackle position. And we saw him do this with the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, they're not going to put him at left tackle. He is strictly going to be a left guard. He is a definition of a stone wall in terms of just being a guard that can go out there, be a very good run blocker, be an elite pass protector. That is what he is, and he's very versatile. You also bring in Drew Dalman, who is a very good center from the Atlanta Falcons. Not too many people were speaking of Drew Dalman as a top free agent, but he is. He's a great run blocker. Pass protecting, he'll let up some plays. But Caleb Williams, he has that mobility to leave outside the pocket and make some of the best throws that you'll ever see. But adding in Drew Dalman, he comes over from a zone rushing system with the Atlanta Falcons. And then you also brought in Jonah Jackson from the Los Angeles Rams. And Jonah Jackson got to play with Ben Johnson once before. So when I look at the situation that they have with their trio now in that interior, what did the Kansas City Chiefs do? They built the interior of their offensive line and then helped out the tackle position. Look at the Carolina Panthers. They drafted Ickey a couple of years ago in the first round. They had to put better guards around him and a better center. He looks better. I expect for the same thing to happen with Darnell Wright at the right tackle position and the same thing with Braxton Jones at the left tackle position. And basically now what you have done with this offensive line, you have given Ben Johnson pieces that can kick out. These are versatile offensive linemen. They can swing out. You can run some power plays, some counter plays. And that zone rushing system should help out Caleb Williams. It should help him see the field even more. Because the one thing that the Chicago Bears struggled with doing on a consistent basis from this previous season was run the football at a high clip. You have DeAndre Swift, and he's a very talented running back. We just saw him a few years ago with the Philadelphia Eagles. He had over 1,000 yards rushing. We saw him with the Detroit Lions. He was a solid running back. The only thing with him is injuries, and that's it. He should fit this system with Ben Johnson, that zone rushing system, a bunch of counters, a bunch of misdirection in the backfield, and it should help out Caleb Williams inside the pocket. This offseason was about building the trenches and helping out Caleb Williams. Whether you bring back Keenan Allen or not, you have two key wide receivers on the outside with Rome Odunze and with DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a true number one wide receiver. He's one of the best wide receivers that you can have. He can be a diva at times, but most top wide receivers through the NFL history, they're going to be divas. He just had 966 receiving yards, 6 receiving touchdowns. He averaged 10 yards a catch. That's a down year for him. He's easily a wide receiver that can go out there and get you between 1,200 and 1,400 yards in the season. And you look at Rome Odunze. He flew underneath the radar this season because this was a terrible situation where everyone involved. He had 734 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. They could bring back Keenan Allen, but I'll just let him walk. Go out there and invest that money into another offensive lineman or put more of that money into defense. And I think that they have already done that by bringing in some solid defensive players. And I'm going to touch on that in the next couple of minutes. But you don't have to bring back Keenan Allen. You have your star players in DJ Moore. You got him in that trade with the Carolina Panthers when they trade up to the first overall pick to get Bryce Young. And then you brought in Rome Odunze in the first round last year with Caleb Williams. So that connection is going to be there. You also have Cole Kmet at the tight end spot. What did Ben Johnson do with the Detroit Lions? It was so many weapons at the wide receiving position with St. Brown, with Jameson Williams, with Sam Laporta. He's going to use all of these weapons to his disposal. And do not be surprised if the number 3 or number 4 wide receiver, if they get a lot of shine as the season progresses, because that is what Ben Johnson loves to do. He loves to use everyone on his offense, but he has never coached a player like Caleb Williams before. Jared Goff is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL. But when you look at Caleb Williams, it's that skill set that he has. He has the ability to make throws like Josh Allen, like Patrick Mahomes. That is why the Bears fell in love with him. That is why they drafted him with the first overall pick. He is a better prospect than Justin Fields. He's a better prospect than Mitch Trubisky. You already look at him in his rookie season. He had 20 passing touchdowns and 6 interceptions. And he had 3,544 passing yards. You expect for a rookie quarterback that got to hit as much as he did to at least have double-digit interceptions. He did a very good job of taking care of the football. But the one thing with Caleb Williams, that clock has to go off in his head. He has to know when to give up on the play, when to throw the football away. You can't hold on to the football for a very long time in this league. They're going to break you if you do that. We saw this with Andrew Luck. We've seen this with Big Ben. No matter how big you are, how talented you are, you take enough hits, they're going to add up. But building this wall around Caleb Williams is one of the best things I have seen over the last few weeks from the Chicago Bears. You already have your skill position set. Go out there, make sure that he's protected, and put him in this system. And Caleb Williams, with that skill set, he should be able to pop off in year number 2. Year number 2 is really a make or break season for a lot of young quarterbacks in the NFL. Because you give a young quarterback a good offensive line with good weapons on the outside, if he can't hack it, that's when you know our quarterback may be no good. You still give him time. But when you've put everything around this kid and he still can't work out, that's when you may say, hey, we may have got this one wrong, but I don't think that they did. He had a solid season with terrible coaching with Matt Eberflus as the head coach. He still has that timeout from that Detroit Lions game on Thanksgiving Day in his pocket till this day. He's carrying that with him right now with the Dallas Cowboys because he's their new DC. And you look at Shane Waldron, terrible offensive coordinator. They fired him at the halfway point in the season. And the offense looked better underneath Thomas Brown, who was a solid offensive coordinator in my opinion. And I hope that one day he does find success in the NFL. But adding in Drew Dalman, Jonah Jackson, and also Joe Thuney, those are great moves for any organization in the NFL, but especially for the Chicago Bears. What the Detroit Lions did so many years ago, when Dan Campbell came out and said, we're going to bite kneecaps off, we're going to beat you into the ground. That's the type of offense that Dan Campbell wanted, who orchestrated that offense every single year and every single week. Ben Johnson did. And you'll have a couple games where Jared Goff had over 40 pass attempts in the matchup. You shouldn't do that with Caleb Williams. I like Ben Johnson as a head coach. I think that he'll be successful. You have a very good general manager in Rod Poles. Hopefully, the Chicago Bears can be good. Because every single year, and I'm guilty of it, they make a big move, and you'll hear national media, they'll come out, this is it. This really feels like that they're really turning the corner. I could be wrong, but I really hope that I'm not. And I'm not going to come on here and say that they're going to be in a great situation with their offensive lineman, that Caleb Williams is going to be a Hall of Famer. We have to see all of these players play. But what they've added on this offensive line, Caleb Williams should be very successful. And I will also add on to this. In the first round, you have a fairly high pick. You could bring in another tackle. There's also a running back by the name of Ashton Jeanty who will fit this system very well. You could go out there, you can bring him in the first round. And I know you may call me crazy. Why would you select a running back in the first round like Ashton Jeanty when you have DeAndre Swift? Because of the injury concerns with DeAndre Swift. Ashton Jeanty is one of the best players in the draft. You give Caleb Williams him with DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, Rome Odunze. This is when you will actually know if you have a franchise quarterback or not. You're giving him a consistent run game, a very good offensive line with veterans that have won with respective teams. Joe Thuney is a Super Bowl champion. Jonah Jackson has been to the playoffs many times. Drew Dahlman, very good center. You give Caleb Williams all that and he can't be successful. You can't blame the coaches. You can't blame the general manager. You have to blame the player. But I think if you add in Ashton Jeanty, it'll be a match made in heaven with him and Ben Johnson in his own rushing system. Now look at the defense, because their defense was a problem when they fired Matt Eberflus. That's going to happen when you fire your head coach. Let's just be honest here. Matt Eberflus was a defensive head coach. He did a lot of good things on the defensive side of the ball. Unfortunately, he was a head coach. He wasn't just a defensive coordinator. When I look at the situation for the Bears now, you're adding in players that fit the system of Dennis Allen. You bring in Dayo, and not too many people will know who Dayo is. He was a very good edge rusher for the Indianapolis Colts. Only had 3 sacks on the year, 2 forced fumbles. But it's the fact that he can go back there. He can put a lot of pressure on the opposing quarterback. He led the Indianapolis Colts in complete pressures. And who was on the other side? Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat had 5.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. That's a down year for him. And you do have Darrell Taylor, who is a solid rotational pass rusher. We just saw Montez Sweat lead 2 teams in sacks. The Washington Commanders and the Chicago Bears. When the Bears traded for him, they traded the second round pick to bring him in. He can be a premier pass rusher. He's a definition of a true number 1 edge rusher on your team, but he needs help. You're not just going to double team Montez Sweat every single time like how you just did this previous season, because Dayo, he can go back there, put pressure on you. The sack numbers aren't there, but if he can bring you down, he could easily have 8 to 10 sacks on the season. And you also bring in Grady Jarrett. And I feel for Grady Jarrett, the Atlanta Falcons, they had to cut him. They did not want to cut him. But by you bringing him in, he's an elite run stopper and he can get to the quarterback. It was a lot of times in his tenure with the Atlanta Falcons, he was their best pass rusher. He can give you 5.5 sacks to 7.5 sacks in the season. And you look at this division, the Detroit Lions, they're not going anywhere. Even without Ben Johnson, they're still going to be a threat. They're going to want to run the football because of who their head coach is. The Green Bay Packers, you have one of the best running backs in the NFL in Josh Jacobs. Go out there and stop the run. And to give more credit and more shine to the Detroit Lions, you have a 2-headed monster. You have David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. Just give those guys their respect. And you look at the Minnesota Vikings, they're not known for running the football, but Aaron Jones is a very good running back. You have to go out there, stop the run with him. So building up this defensive line and having those 2 linebackers that you got 2 years ago in free agency with TJ Edwards, with Tremaine Edmonds, that is definitely going to help you out. You know, so many different looks that you can give the opposing offense. It's about being versatile with Dennis Allen, who is a great defensive coordinator. As a head coach, he's terrible. But as a DC, Saints fans will tell you he was a very good defensive coordinator, especially when he went against Tom Brady. And we have seen him go against some premier quarterbacks before, like Big Ben, like Andrew Luck. He has given them problems in the past. The game planning will be there on the defensive side of the ball. And their secondary is locked down. Tariq Stevenson had a horrible moment. He had a terrible moment. He led up that Hail Mary play to the Washington Commanders, and the Bears are not the same since that loss. But he's a very good player, playing alongside one of the best cornerbacks in Jalen Johnson. You're bringing back Kevin Byard. I think he's a solid safety. He is getting older. You can draft you a safety in the 3rd or 4th round, by the way. This is a very good draft class for safeties. This is a very good draft class for defense and offensive line. Let's just be honest here, in running backs. You're not going to find a generational quarterback in this draft class or a great wide receiver. But when you look at defense and offensive line, this is a draft class for you and for the running back position. And you have Kyler Gordon and the nickel holding things down. The Bears have talent. I've said this year in and year out. It just comes down to, can the coaching be there for them? It's a first-year head coach in Ben Johnson. I wish him nothing but all the success in the world. You're bringing in the right offensive lineman to run this system. Hopefully it really works out, because I look at the Bears and I promise Bulls fans that video is coming with the Chicago Bulls. It's not that much to root for right now in Chicago. Hopefully that can be the Bears, because I was very upset when I saw that game against the Seattle Seahawks, one of the worst Thursday night football games I've ever seen. You had the Bears fans saying sell the team. That's how upset they were. And they rarely say things like that, and they rarely chant things like that. We're talking about a fan base that has been through Jay Cutler, Mitch Trubisky, and Justin Fields. Even when they first traded Justin Fields, a lot of fans were upset. They didn't say sell the team. That is how pissed off they were. You have the potential there with Caleb Williams. You have stars in Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Jalen Johnson. It's time to actually turn this thing around and get put into the right situation. And when I look at this division, it's going to be tough, man. This may be the toughest division in the NFL, with the Minnesota Vikings, the Green Bay Packers, and the Detroit Lions. But hey, the tougher your division, you go out there and you beat those teams, you're basically playing mini playoff games in the regular season. It gears you up for the playoffs. But if you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. Let me know in the comment section below, how do you feel about the Chicago Bears? And can this finally be the year for the Bears? Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless. Peace.